happy and excited that new doors are opening for Venezuela.
Mixed reactions, from joy that the U.S. arrested and removed Venezuela's brutal dictator, to congressional questions about legality and U.S. presidential overreach. We explore the Nicolas Maduro case through a Catholic lens with former Attorney General Bill Barr. Big events at the Vatican as Pope Leo closes the Jubilee Year of Hope and opens new dialogue with the College of Cardinals to set his agenda for the future.
It's the fulfillment that I find in Christ. It's the fulfillment that I find in the Catholic Church.
And overwhelming turnout for the annual Seek Conference of Young Catholics. We follow 3 college students on their path to Christ. EWTN News In Depth starts now.
It has been so many years suffering. I have been without my family for 6 years, and I can't wait to happen.
A hope to return home. Cheers rang out in South Florida this week, where the largest population of Venezuelan immigrants in the U.S. celebrated the capture of President Nicolas Maduro. They are just some of the millions of Venezuelans around the world who left their home country to escape his brutal regime. But questions remain about the future of their South American nation. Welcome to EWTN News In Depth. I'm Catherine Hadro. That joy of the Venezuelan diaspora over Maduro's capture by U.S. forces is a sharp contrast to the condemnation President Donald Trump faces at home and abroad from political leaders. The historic incursion into Venezuela just 1 week ago was months in the making, but questions remain about whether Trump's plan will finally bring peace to a nation rich in oil but torn apart by an oppressive regime. In the early hours of January 3rd, the United States launched an unprecedented large-scale incursion on Venezuela's capital of Caracas. In under 3 hours, U.S. forces entered the city and seized President Nicolas Maduro and his wife to face charges in U.S. court. It is the most direct action U.S. forces have taken in Latin America in decades. During his court hearing in New York on Monday, Maduro pleaded not guilty to charges of narco-terrorism conspiracy, saying he is a, quote, decent man. The Trump administration has long called for Maduro's ousting. In late 2025, tensions heightened as the U.S. sent a fleet of warships to South American waters and struck boats allegedly smuggling drugs from Venezuela.
Senators who were in that briefing describing your operation variously as that you're winging it.
It's not just winging it. It's not just saying or speculating it's going to happen. It's already happening.
On Wednesday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio shared details about the White House's plan to stabilize Venezuela and ensure a transition to a more representative government. The U.S. will closely oversee the plan, which President Trump told the New York Times could take more than a year. Central to this plan is the U.S. controlling distribution of Venezuela's oil, much of which is quarantined in Venezuela due to a Trump-imposed blockade. The administration says the U.S. would use proceeds from the oil to benefit the Venezuelan people. Just days after Maduro's capture, the U.S. seized 2 oil tankers in the Atlantic.
They want that oil that was seized to be part of this deal. They understand that the only way they can move oil and generate revenue and not have economic collapse is if they cooperate and work with the United States, and that's what we see are going to happen.
The Trump administration's operation has been met with sharp criticism from the international community.
I am deeply concerned about the possible intensification, the instability in the country, the potential impact on the region, and the precedent it may set for how relations between and among states are conducted.
Pope Leo XIV, a U.S.-born pontiff with deep roots in Latin America, shared during his Sunday Angelus that he was closely following Venezuela's situation.
Il bene dell'amato popolo venezuelano.
The good of the beloved Venezuelan people must prevail over every other consideration and lead to overcoming violence and embarking on paths of justice and peace.
Giustizia e di pace.
He doesn't really talk about the politics. He talks about, as he should as pastor, the moral framework that should guide the analysis. And so I'm happy that he pointed out that the good of the Venezuelan people has to prevail.
Robert Destro, retired law professor and former assistant secretary for the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights and Labor at the State Department, says the Catholic Church has a legitimate concern about national security.
From a Catholic perspective, the question is, does the arrest of Maduro serve the common good of the United States and of Venezuela and arguably of everybody else in the region?
Andres Enriquez, who reports in Caracas for EWTN's Spanish language service, Así Prensa, says the Catholic Church in Venezuela has faced persecution for speaking out against Chavismo, the regime first led by Hugo Chavez and then Maduro.
Following the 2024 presidential elections, the Church has been very courageous in denouncing the criminal nature of Chavismo and demanding respect for the election results, which were evidently stolen. Chavismo even tried to take credit for the canonization of the first Venezuelan saints last October, while simultaneously accusing the Church of all sorts of falsehoods.
He says the ethos of the regime is anti-Catholic.
It's pagan and it's even satanic, so I really do hope the situation of the Church in Venezuela will improve with Maduro's capture, just as we hope that every aspect of the country will improve.
Democratic lawmakers on Capitol Hill have been largely outspoken in their disapproval of the surprise incursion, and even some Republicans were concerned they were never informed of the operation. On Thursday, senators voted on a measure to prevent Trump from using further military force in Venezuela without congressional approval. 5 Republicans broke from their party to side with all Democrats, resulting in a 52-47 vote.
I'm still supportive of the president, but that doesn't mean I can just sort of give up on a deeply held position that Congress, is intended to be the body that declares war.
The reality is Congress has not authorized military action in Venezuela. And the idea that we are now going to run this country of so many millions without having to put boots on the ground, that we are going to somehow oversee a transition over a period of time without putting our service members further at risk seems highly improbable, to say the least.
Thursday's vote was procedural. The Senate will vote on the measure again next week before it heads to the House. The War Powers Resolution of 1973 requires the White House to consult lawmakers before and after military action. But the Trump administration has labeled the incursion as a law enforcement operation and therefore beyond congressional jurisdiction. The Republican majorities in the House and Senate have dismissed several other War Powers resolutions since Trump's second term began. But one hopeful sign of change in Venezuela on Thursday, as the government announced it would release a significant number of political prisoners. Relatives of those detained waited outside a prison in Guatire, eager to see their loved ones. The government did not specify just how many prisoners it would release or provide names, but at least 8 have been confirmed so far. Venezuela has faced broad pressure from the U.S. and other foreign powers to release its hundreds of political prisoners, many of whom face harsh conditions. Joining us now to discuss the Maduro case is former U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr. He led the Justice Department twice, most recently in the previous Trump administration when he oversaw an indictment in 2020 accusing Maduro of involvement in a cocaine trafficking network. Thank you so much for being with us. Let's start with the question everyone is asking. Was the military action to capture Maduro legitimate under U.S. law? Is Congress right to be divided and upset that there was no congressional authorization?
Yes, it was completely legitimate under U.S. law, under our Constitution. And that raises 2 questions. One, do we have the power as a country? Is it appropriate under American law to, use our defense and law enforcement powers the way we did to apprehend Maduro? And the second question is, assuming it is legal for the United States to do it, which branch of government should make that call, and is it necessary to have congressional approval? And there's been debate on both of those sides. And my question, in my mind, there's no question that the United States, under our Constitution, had the right to deal with the threat posed by the cocaine trafficking, the drug activities, and the threatening conduct of Maduro's regime with Cuba, China, and Russia. And then as to who should approve it, I think the history is very clear that this kind of action, targeted action to deal with a particular threat, is within the discretion of the president. Yes, the Congress can declare war, but responding to particular threats and using force is something that historically virtually all presidents have done.
Well, in fact, the last time the U.S. deposed a Latin American leader was exactly 36 years ago to the day that Maduro was captured, when U.S. forces captured General Manuel Noriega in Panama. You were the Assistant U.S. Attorney General at the time. The White House relied heavily on your legal opinion to conduct that invasion. Does Noriega's case preview what we should expect to see with Maduro? What are the legal parallels and differences between the Maduro and Noriega cases?
Well, you're absolutely right. I was responsible at that time for all the legal issues surrounding just cause, where President George H.W. Bush sent 26,000 troops down there to arrest, capture, and bring back for trial Manuel Noriega. There are a lot of parallels. We did not recognize Noriega as the legitimate government of Panama because there had been an election which clearly the Democratic forces won, and he suppressed it and remained in power. Same thing with Maduro. We do not recognize Maduro. Under our law, Maduro is not the leader of the state. Maduro is just a Venezuelan citizen who has seized power and is oppressing the Venezuelan people. That's how our law views it. And that was the same with Panama. Both of them were involved heavily in the drug business. I'd have to say Maduro's much more heavily involved and has repressed his country for over a decade and has destroyed their economy. The economy of Panama was weak, but these are people who drove the economy from being the wealthiest in South America down 80%, the GDP down 80%, to the point where many of their citizens have to forage in garbage bins to eat. That's what we're dealing with. Quarter of the country left the country, a quarter of it, 8 million people. So we're dealing with a human crisis, a humanitarian crisis. We're dealing with a country that's deeply involved in narcotics trade, and it was clearly justified both as a matter of law enforcement and defending the interests of the American people.
Pope Leo has called for the safeguarding of Venezuela's sovereignty and that the rule of law enshrined in the Constitution is followed. From a Catholic perspective, how can we apply the just war theory to this specific moment? How are you viewing this from a Catholic lens?
Well, there are a number of things. First, a just war is fought for defensive purposes, to protect the interests, the well-being of your own citizens. And here, you're dealing with a regime that has been preying on the United States. We indicted him because, and there will be evidence, that he's deliberately trying to weaken and hurt the United States. And he's responsible for tens of thousands of Americans, probably hundreds of thousands after all this time, of American deaths. It's a deliberate thing to attack our country. And also our vital interests were at stake. He was providing a base for Hezbollah. He was involved in manufacturing weapons for Iran to use against our allies. And he provided a base for Russia and China in his country. But you know what? Sovereignty, why do we care about sovereignty? Because sovereignty is to show respect for the idea that a people should determine their own future. They should make their own choices, that a people should be able to govern themselves. Now that applies where you have freedom, but we're dealing here with a regime that overturned the results of a free election and clearly was not accepted by the people. When you have a quarter of the country leaving, and polls and every indication is the last election they held, he lost again.
Right.
So you're dealing with an unpopular dictator who has seized power and turned that country into a piggy bank for his family and for his generals. why should we respect sovereignty over the freedom of the people?
And speaking of freedom, you have been a prominent defender of religious liberty. Can you shed any insight into the religious liberty landscape in Venezuela and persecutions that Venezuelan Catholics are facing right now?
Well, yes. I mean, this is a secular socialist government, and they have not protected religious liberty, especially where they view leaders as hostile to the government or not supporting their policies. And the Catholic bishops down there, I think, issued a statement and made clear that they felt that he had been an oppressive ruler and were relieved to see him ousted from power, and that was a positive step. And I hope the leaders in Rome pay attention to the position of the Catholic bishops down in Venezuela that have had to deal with it.
And my final moment with you, after Maduro, do you foresee the Trump administration honing in on another nation next? Cuba, Colombia, for example?
I don't know, I would use the idea of honing in, but Cuba is completely dependent on Venezuelan oil. And Cuba is so poor because of their socialist regime that they can't afford to buy oil. So what they do is they swap military and intelligence assets and help to the Venezuelans in order to get the oil. I think the oil will be shut down, and I think that will create a crisis in Cuba, and I think Cuba could very easily fall. I think it also puts pressure on Colombia. The leader of Colombia is the first socialist left-wing leader of Colombia. Has had it in over 100 years, and it's been a disaster for the country. His ratings are extremely low. This is an election year. He cannot succeed himself. So I think there's an opportunity for a change in government there. I don't think we necessarily have to do anything there. I think that will come.
Former U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's great to talk to you.
Of course, EWTN News will continue to follow developments inside Venezuela and the Maduro court proceedings in the U.S. in the weeks and months to come to give you the very latest. Next, coverage of some big news at the Vatican. A first in the papacy of Leo XIV. Members of the College of Cardinals are called to Rome to help the Pope set his future agenda.
Pope Leo closes the Jubilee Year of Hope at St. Peter's Basilica. I'm Valentina DiGenato at the Vatican. That report coming up.
It did bring me to tears, which isn't like me, but it wasn't tears of sadness, but joy.
And the joy of being with thousands of other young Catholics on a shared faith journey. Experience Seek 2026 coming up. Pope Leo is greeted on Wednesday at the first extraordinary consistory of his papacy as cardinals from all over the globe are called to Rome for dialogue, advice, and consultation. Days after he became Pope last May, Leo had pledged to include the College of Cardinals in helping guide his decision-making. Its 245 members are from diverse cultures, ecclesial and social traditions, and pastoral experiences. In gathering them together at the Vatican, Pope Leo encouraged unity and focusing on the four themes of evangelization and mission, synodality, liturgy, and reform of the Curia.
Siamo chiamati prima di tutto.
We are called first of all to get to know each other and to dialogue in order to work together in the service of the Church. I hope we can grow in communion to offer a model of collegiality. I am here to listen.
The Pope has indicated the possibility of more fully implementing reforms from the Second Vatican Council, devoting his weekly catechism lessons to a rereading of key Vatican Council documents. At the end of this week's two-day consistory, intended to assist Pope Leo in looking ahead at his future agenda, the Vatican announced the Holy Father will hold extraordinary consistories every year for 3 to 4 days beginning in June of this year. Leo's week ended with another consequential meeting, this one with the Vatican diplomatic corps. The annual gathering is a chance for the Pope to share his foreign policy concerns and what is often called a State of the Globe address. In a passionate and wide-ranging speech, he decried the use of military force and condemned not only ongoing conflicts and religious discrimination, but he emphasized that peace is still a realistic, if difficult, good. In a historic first, the speech to the diplomats was mostly in English.
War is back in vogue, and the zeal for war is spreading. The principle established after the Second World War, which prohibited nations from using force to violate the borders of others, has been completely undermined.
The Holy Father once again mentioned the U.S. incursion into Venezuela, emphasizing that the will of the country's people must be respected. Pope Leo also reiterated the Vatican's stance on a two-state solution for the conflict in Gaza. EWTN News Vatican analyst and senior contributor for the National Catholic Register, Edward Penton, joins us now from our Vatican Bureau, where he's been tracking the news coming out of the Consistory this week. Edward has decades of experience covering the church. Edward, great to see you. First, Pope Leo called for an extraordinary consistory so early into his pontificate, and now we learn there will be another one in June and likely every year. What is your reaction to this news, and is this a sign that Pope Leo is trying to distinguish himself from Pope Francis, who only held 2 extraordinary consistories in his entire pontificate?
That's right, Catherine. Yes, I mean, one of the concerns of the Cardinals going into the conclave last year was that they didn't really have any time to consult the Pope. One of their chief roles is to be to give counsel to the Pope, and they weren't able to do that because the Pope Francis, as you say, only had 2 extraordinary consistories during his whole pontificate, and really relied on his sort of kitchen cabinet of 9 cardinals, the C9 they were called. So there was very little chance for the cardinals to get together in one big assembly to really just say what they were thinking about the church, their hopes for the church, and to really advise the Pope in that way, which has been the traditional way of cardinals going back centuries. So this, I think Pope Leo has acted on that, and this is very much part of that. He's going to have, as you say, he's going to have another consistory at the end of June, and then there's going to be, hopefully he wants one every year, probably longer too, maybe 3 to 4 days.
Wow. Due to time constraints this week, the Cardinals could only focus on 2 out of the 4 themes for this consistory. They chose synodality and evangelization and mission. Liturgy and reform of the Curia will be saved for when there is more time. Edward, what are you hearing from Cardinals about this decision and the conversations that took place this week?
Yes, well, on the one hand, some cardinals were concerned about this. They were disappointed because the liturgy, of course, is very central to the church. You can't. Their belief really is that, you know, if the liturgy isn't right, if they're not worshiping God in the right way, then evangelization doesn't work very well. It's not very possible. So they wanted liturgy to be put at the center, and also because of the sensitivity of the issue over the last decades. And so there was concern about that. But on the other hand, Pope himself and others said that that is an issue that could be brought up at other times. It wasn't really mentioned this time. But as I say, there's going to be more consistories going forward, and there'll be more chances for these issues, not only liturgy, but other issues, of course, to be included. The consistory itself was very short. I mean, it was only really 36 hours. So there's plenty. I think the hope is that there'll be plenty of opportunity in the future, and with these new consistories coming up, that will be the case.
In other big news, Pope Leo gave a major policy address on Friday to the diplomatic corps, almost all in English. Edward, what was his message, and what stands out to you from what was a rich speech?
Yeah, well, the principal message I think he gave, Catherine, was that he's concerned that the nations are taking to war and use of force more and more, and less to dialogue and multilateralism and respect for international law and human dignity. So his whole thrust of this speech really was to call nations back to that example of focusing on dialogue and multilateralism and avoiding use of force. But also he was talking a little bit about free speech, which was quite interesting. He spoke about his concerns about restrictions on free speech and what he called a sort of Orwellian style of language, which is increasing, which excludes those who don't conform to the ideology that's actually fueling that kind of Orwellian language. So that was interesting too. And then the third issue which he focused on, which I thought was interesting and spoke very strongly about it, was the pro-life issue. And he spoke about the deplorable fact that a lot of funding goes towards abortion, but not to supporting families. And he also spoke about surrogacy and other issues, also the rights of conscience rights as well for individuals. So a very, very full speech, a very strong speech, and probably one of the strongest I think he's given since his election last year.
Certainly. Edward, Pope Leo announced earlier this week he is going to begin a new catechesis series during his Wednesday general audiences dedicated to Vatican Council II and a rereading of its documents. Here's our Holy Father on Wednesday.
The work of the Council Fathers paved the way for a new ecclesial season, placing at its center the mystery of salvation and the unity between God and his people.
Edward, what's your read on why our Holy Father is wanting to launch this new catechesis series?
Yes, I think it's interesting, Catherine, because I think one of the main reasons is because the generation that were part of the council have died or that they're reaching the end of their lives. And so he wants to really bring back to a new generation, those who were not alive around the council, to reread the documents and so get a real sense, a true idea of what the council was about, instead of the spin that's been evolving since the council since the council ended in 1965. So I think his whole purpose of this is to really get a good grounding in what the council was all about, a great understanding about what it's about, to overcome some of the myths that have grown up since the council ended. I think that's one of the main reasons, and really just to help bring alive again the council. And as I say, to really reinforce what it was all about, and the original purpose of it, and the original aims that it had when it was started by Pope John the 23rd.
All very interesting. Edward Penton, as always, thank you for your reporting and insights.
Thank you, Catherine.
Before this week's consistory, another major event happened at the Vatican. At St. Peter's, Pope Leo presided over the end of the Jubilee Year of Hope. EWTN Vatican correspondent Valentina De Donato reports.
Six days after the start of 2026, Pope Leo XIV closed the Catholic Church's Holy Year by shutting the Holy Door in St. Peter's Basilica. And during the Holy Father's homily on the Feast of the Epiphany, Pope Leo urged Christians around the world to help those in need and treat immigrants with care.
Around us, a distorted economy tries to profit from everything. We see how the marketplace can turn human yearnings of seeking, traveling, and beginning again into a mere business. Let us ask ourselves, has the Jubilee taught us to flee from this type of efficiency that reduces everything to a product and human beings to consumers? After this year, will we be better able to recognize a pilgrim in the visitor, a seeker in the stranger, a neighbor in the foreigner, and fellow travelers and those who are different?
Nel diverso, un compagno di viaggio.
Jubilees, also known as holy years, typically happen every 25 years and are deemed a time of forgiveness and pardon. Pilgrims flock to Rome to walk through the holy doors at the 4 Roman basilicas. Over the last 10 days, the closing of the holy doors was a visible sign of the last days of the holy year. On Christmas Day, Cardinal Rolandas Macricas presided at the rite of closing the holy door of the Basilica of St. Mary Major. Cardinal Vicar Baldassare Reina presided over the shutting of the holy door on the feast of St. John, the Apostle and Evangelist. On the Feast of the Holy Family, Cardinal James Harvey, Archpriest of the Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls, celebrated the rite of closing the holy door. EWTN News spoke to the last pilgrims that came from near and far to get the chance to walk through the holy doors of St. Peter's.
We're going to St. Peter's and going through the Jubilee door. It is immense. Basically, he's an American, but he's on everybody's pope. So he's Christ and the God on earth. So it's whatever, the Pope is special no matter what, but it's special to us being in this America.
In fact, of those 33 million pilgrims that came to Rome for the Jubilee year, Americans made up the second most represented nationality, according to the Vatican. EWTN News spoke with Archbishop Rino Fisichella, pro-prefect for the Dicastery for Evangelization, who tells us that he believes they will be bringing much back with them when returning home.
Yes, we must say that the second largest group in attendance, at least 32%, comes from the United States. This allowed us to see how registrations for major events, especially the election of Pope Leo, have sparked great enthusiasm among the American faithful. Their participation has therefore been massive.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Annette from Serbia came because it has been a very special personal year that, she says, has also ignited her faith.
In a certain way, it did, because I just gave birth to my daughter. It's my only child, so everything is very special about this holiday in Rome for me. It's a unique time when we can do this. I guess for 25 years I won't be here. Maybe I will, who knows. But I thought it was nice and it was a special occasion.
The 2025 Jubilee was marked by a historical rarity not seen for 300 years. It was opened by Pope Francis and closed by his successor, Pope Leo XIV. The last Jubilee held under two popes was in 1700 when Clement XI closed a holy year opened by Innocent XII. The next Jubilee is not expected before 2033, when the Church may have a special Jubilee year to mark 2,000 years since the death of Jesus Christ. In Rome, Valentina Di Donato for EWTN News In Depth.
With the close of the Jubilee Year of Hope, a look forward for the rest of the month with the Pope's prayer intention for January. Pope Leo has asked for people to pray with the Word of God, to nourish lives and to provide a source of community hope. Ahead, a message from the Archbishop of Minneapolis, St. Paul, after an altercation with ICE agents leaves one woman dead. A pro-life leader joins us to discuss presidential advice that abandons the pro-life mission and details of America's next Eucharistic pilgrimage. News headlines are next in the Week in Review. A fatal shooting in Minneapolis involving ICE officers has sparked outrage and controversy around the country. That story tops the Week in Review. 37-year-old Renee Good was killed on Wednesday when an ICE officer shot her in the head. The Department of Homeland Security says she was trying to run over an ICE agent with her car, and he acted in self-defense. Video of the shooting has been analyzed and watched over and over again by law enforcement officials as well as by commentators and the general public. Her car was in the path of ICE agents in a Minneapolis neighborhood. It is not clear why Good was there. While one ICE officer told her to move her car, another told her to get out of the car. When she pulled forward, she was shot. The incident happens during a time when ICE is being sharply questioned for the aggressive tactics it's using in rounding up immigrants. In this case, while federal officials say the ICE agent was acting in self-defense, Local officials say Good posed no danger. Tensions grew late this week when the FBI said it would deny Minnesota crime investigators access to key evidence. But exclusion of state authorities could undermine public trust in the outcome of the shooting investigation.
The head of Minnesota State Investigations Agency said that they have been cut out of the investigation into the fatal shooting in Minneapolis. Can you explain that reversal?
I'd like to know where they've been and why they're not out on the streets investigating all of these people that are harassing and inciting violence on law enforcement officers right now. They're allowing this situation to be volatile. They're not doing their work.
Am I concerned about this development? Of course I am. We want to make sure that there is a check on this administration to ensure that this investigation is done for justice, not for the sake of a cover-up. That's the underlying concern.
The ICE shooting has sparked protests and prayer vigils in Minneapolis and in cities across the country. Thousands of people have come out to express their outrage at Good's death and the tactics being used by ICE officers. Archbishop Bernard Hebda of the Archdiocese of St. Paul in Minneapolis released this statement in response to the shooting. We continue to be at a time in this country when we need to lower the temperature of rhetoric, stop fear-filled speculation, and start seeing all people as created in the image and likeness of God. I echo today the repeated call of the U.S. Catholic bishops that we come together as a nation and pass meaningful immigration reform that does justice to all parties. The longer we refuse to grapple with this issue in the political arena, the more divisive and violent it becomes. This week marked an infamous date in U.S. history. 5 years ago, on January 6th, protesters trying to stop the certification of the 2020 presidential election stormed the U.S. Capitol. The attack disrupted the joint session of Congress, which had convened to count electoral votes and formalize President Joe Biden's victory. Barricades were overrun as the crowd clashed with Capitol Police and gained entry into the building. The certification process was delayed by hours as lawmakers evacuated and went into lockdown. 5 people died as a result of the violence. A political divide remains today as to whether these were patriotic Americans trying to stop the steal, as proclaimed by President Trump, or insurrectionists attacking the symbol of American democracy. This year, on January 6th, Democrats held a hearing to remember the 5th anniversary. One of the rioters, who served time in federal prison for taking part in the attack, returned to the Capitol Tuesday to publicly apologize to Capitol Police, who put their lives on the line to protect lawmakers that day.
Gaslighting caused a lot of fear, and I was scared. With that fear in my heart, I came here on January the 6th. I went from Trump's speech to the Capitol. I am truly sorry from the bottom of my heart. When Donald Trump pardoned us, I rejected the pardon. Accepting that pardon would be lying about what happened on January the 6th. I am guilty, and I own that guilt.
Representing the other side of the political divide, a small group of former rioters gathered to retrace their steps from the White House to the Capitol 5 years ago. The group included the former leader of the Proud Boys and the mother of Trump supporter Ashley Babbitt, who was shot and killed by a Capitol police officer as she tried to breach the Speaker's lobby. Congress is now back in session following the holiday break, and members face many high-stakes policy issues which need timely solutions. Among them, federal spending as a government shutdown looms at the end of this month. The expiration of healthcare subsidies, which has made health insurance unaffordable for millions of Americans, and now a new focus on the War Powers Act with the U.S. military action in Venezuela. Both parties acknowledge partisan gridlock, and last year's extended congressional recesses nearly ground Congress to a halt.
The House of Representatives in particular needs to get back in the driver's seat when it comes to, tackling the challenges facing our country.
Funding the government before a January 30th shutdown is among the most pressing matters, with the House voting on a series of mini bills as appropriators tackle different budget areas. And lawmakers are working on compromises that would extend subsidies for 3 years under the Affordable Care Act, in the absence of a more comprehensive congressional plan to address rising health care costs. Pro-life leaders are pushing back against President Trump's stunning appeal to House Republicans to be flexible on the taxpayer funding of abortion. The president's comments came earlier this week during the Republican conference retreat ahead of negotiations to extend the Affordable Care Act healthcare subsidies.
Let the money go directly to the people. Now, you have to be a little flexible on Hyde. You know that. You got to be a little flexible. You got to work something. You got to use ingenuity. You got to work.
Hyde refers to the long-standing Hyde Amendment, which bars federal funding for abortion and is seen as a non-negotiable for pro-life lawmakers. Prominent pro-life leaders swiftly responded to the comments. Students for Life of America President Kristen Hawkins posting on X, "I guess Republicans, including President Trump, still need to learn political history. Kicking the pro-life movement to the curb never ends well in elections for the GOP." And the president of Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America, Marjorie Dannenfelser, issued a statement saying, "For decades, opposition to taxpayer funding of abortion and support for the Hyde Amendment has been an unshakable bedrock principle and a minimum standard in the Republican Party. To suggest Republicans should be flexible is an abandonment of this decades-long commitment. If Republicans abandon Hyde, they are sure to lose this November." Marjorie Dannenfelser joins us now. She is one of the most influential leaders shaping abortion and life issues on Capitol Hill and in state legislatures nationwide. Marjorie, thank you for being here. 17 Republicans on Thursday voted to extend Affordable Care Act subsidies, meaning they also voted to extend the taxpayer funding of abortion within Obamacare for 3 more years. It, of course, or a modified version of it, still has to get through the Senate to become law. But Marjorie, do you think Trump's comments to House Republicans earlier this week influenced those votes? And what is your reaction to this latest news?
Well, it's incredibly damaging to have the president of the United States, the head of the Republican Party, say that we should be flexible on whether our tax dollars pay for the death of other human beings. There's no flexibility on that. Flexibility should be reserved for what you wear tomorrow, what you're going to eat tonight, where you go on vacation. This is a matter of life and death. And this is why it's been a bedrock principle for the GOP since 1976, is when the Hyde Amendment first started. So when Obamacare passed a long time ago, 2010, it passed without Hyde protections, without protecting our dollars. And so what is being proposed now by many House members in the GOP, by some in the Senate, and by deduction from the president, is that we basically do exactly what Democrats did all those years ago, allow Obamacare to go forward without any protections of the babies and the tax dollars that we are providing to kill them. There is something, just a basic principle in life. You fund it, there will be more of it. And that is true of the Hyde Amendment. When the Hyde Amendment is in place, it saves lives. And in every other department of the federal government, the Hyde Amendment still stands. The problem that I think we're looking at now is all those years ago, 2010, it was Democrats, pro-life Democrats, who left the pro-life party. Now we're seeing Republicans do that. The Senate is in good shape, and I think actually we're very strong there, but we have a lot of work to do.
And Marjorie, it was nearly 10 years ago now when then presidential nominee Donald Trump wrote you a letter listing his pro-life promises, which included making the Hyde Amendment permanent law to protect taxpayers from having to pay for abortions. And now this week he is suggesting that this is an issue that can be compromised on. But Marjorie, can you clarify, you have had conversations with the president on the importance of the Hyde Amendment, correct? What has he said to you about the importance of protecting against the taxpayer funding of abortion through the years?
Well, I'll be honest with our Catholic family here. My conversations with him were all first term. Once he got into the second term, he thought he was dealing with the life issue by basically saying states only, we're not doing anything else on the federal level. Well, now we see the consequence of such a position. It means you can't even stand firm on the Hyde Amendment. In the past, oh yes, that commitment has been made many times. And in fact, at the beginning of this administration, he put out an executive order saying yay for the Hyde Amendment. The problem is not just in what you post, but what you do. And that's true of our lives. It's true of this presidency and the party right now.
So it's a different time in this second administration. And speaking of which, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt addressed the pro-life concerns this week with the president's comments. She said he is not changing the administration's policy. Let's take a listen.
What the president was saying yesterday was Republicans, and frankly Democrats too, need to show a little bit more flexibility so we can actually get something done with respect to the issue of health care. He wants to see Congress get something done with respect to health care, and that was the point that he was driving home yesterday.
Marjorie, is it possible that we are in a different political moment now where maybe it's not realistic to insist on high protections? What do you make of that argument that this once was a bipartisan issue and largely supported by both sides, and at least a bare minimum requirement for pro-life lawmakers, but well, now we're at a different time and the pro-life movement needs to face reality?
Well, that is, I 100% reject it for two reasons. One is if just you and I were the last people who believed, we would fight every single step of the way, and everybody here and the Pope just this morning communicating exactly what we're saying now. There is no chance that the power has left the pro-life position. And we've been here before. We've been here at moments where there was a weakening in the GOP spine, where we have to do everything that we can to make sure that we're communicating the moral position and also the political position, that when you abandon the pro-life movement, unfortunately, you're abandoning the support of the pro-life voter. And so that is where they will feel the pain. Unfortunately, sometimes that's just what it is. Self-interest kicks into gear to help people take moral stands sometimes. That's at SBA. That has been the work that we've been doing all these years. It's our reason we were founded. It's what we do. In many reasons, it's why, with a goodwill and God's grace, Roe v. Wade was overturned. Don't forget all the decades of fighting, and right now we are at the best place we could possibly be to move forward and reestablish who this party is and who the pro-life movement is.
And final note with you, Marjorie, I have about 30 seconds left with you, but given the president's comments on Hyde and given the current FDA commissioner's apparent refusal to reinstate safeguards with the abortion pill, is the pro-life movement safe at home within the Republican Party right now?
No, we're not safe. I think communication is key. We can't hold back in demanding what has been promised and following through. And then also, it's just a matter of lives saved. It means those pills got to get out of the mail, and we need to insist upon that and ceaselessly, regardless of what we hear back from the White House or anyone.
Absolutely, Marjorie Dannenfelser, thank you for your clarity and leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are just 2 weeks away from the National March for Life, when hundreds of thousands of pro-lifers from across the country will gather in our nation's capital to stand for the unborn. EWTN will be providing live coverage of this inspiring event on January 23rd. Tune in from 9:30 a.m. to 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern. The Department of Health and Human Services under Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced a major overhaul of the childhood vaccine schedule this week. The unprecedented changes, effective immediately, slashed the number of recommended vaccines from 17 to 11. Vaccines previously recommended for all children, including hepatitis A and B, meningitis, and seasonal flu, are now restricted. Kennedy has long questioned the safety of many childhood vaccines and has claimed U.S. children receive too many. The American Academy of Pediatrics opposes the new schedule, saying it is not based on scientific data. Many public health experts warn eliminating some childhood vaccines will lead to more illness and death from vaccine-preventable diseases. A cause for hope and celebration for Catholics across America with the announcement this week of the next National Eucharistic Pilgrimage, commemorating both the 250th birthday of the founding of the United States and the long history of Catholicism here. The 6-week pilgrimage will invite Catholics to renew their faith when it begins Memorial Day weekend in St. Augustine, Florida, winds its way up the East Coast to New England, and then circles back on July 4th weekend to Philadelphia, where the Declaration of Independence was signed. Both American and Catholic history will be celebrated along the route, which passes through most of the original 13 colonies. Its patroness is St. Francis Xavier Cabrini, the first American citizen to be canonized.
She's the first American citizen to be canonized. She's from Italy. She's an immigrant. We just thought that she was a good representation, particularly as we focus on a national moment, to think about how the United States is made up of a variety of cultures and diversity. She also gives us a real sense of what it looks like to be Catholic and to be patriotic.
This year's pilgrimage hopes to extend the fruits of the 3-year National Eucharistic Revival, which ended last year. It saw tremendous and enthusiastic participation among thousands of Catholics across the country. Next week, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops will release a revival impact report detailing their findings from the 3-year Catholic experience. We will share those findings next week right here on EWTN News In Depth. Next, a story of inspiration as reporter Mark Irons takes us to this year's Seek Conference.
Seek is all about strengthening the spiritual life, but it's all connected, the physical and the spiritual. And it's good to have friends encouraging you in the faith walk. We've got more from Seek coming up.
For decades, the number of Americans who identify as Christians has declined. Nearly half of Gen Z does not have any religious affiliation whatsoever, according to Pew Research. But recent study suggests younger Christians are attending church more frequently than older generations. According to the Barna Group's annual State of the Church report, Gen Z churchgoers attended church nearly 2 times per month in 2025, slightly outpacing all other age groups. And young Catholics who are passionate about following Christ descended by the thousands onto the annual Seek Conference held every year over New Year's weekend. This year, it was held in 3 different cities simultaneously. Reporter Mark Irons traveled with a group of students to Columbus, Ohio, as they went on their journey to seek faith.
It's the morning of the first day of 2026. They could be sleeping in after a late-night New Year's Eve as their college Christmas break continues. But these University of Cincinnati students are awake and ready to go on a bus to begin a real faith journey.
What do you say to those 21-year-olds who are like, "Are you crazy? What are you doing?"
I think, man, just start the free trial. I'd be like, just try it out.
Sal has seen faith change his life for the better.
Growing up, I was not involved in church at all.
Zeta is a brand new Catholic.
I joined the church this year at the Easter Vigil.
And Ben is on the way to something he's never experienced before.
It's going to be like my first convention of any sort.
And this is big.
This is huge, yeah.
Considering, because you're just sort of now beginning your re-entry into faith, it sounds like.
For sure.
Their bus makes the almost 2-hour drive to Columbus, Ohio, and they join a sea of other college-age Catholics from around the country.
It's just so impactful to see all these people that are my age.
This year, spread out across 3 cities in Denver, Fort Worth, Texas, and here in Columbus, more than 26,000 are participating in the annual conference called Seek. A fitting name since all these young people may be on different parts of their journey, asking, searching, many seeking to know Jesus Christ. The 3 college juniors we followed all have different backgrounds and stories. As a college volleyball player, Zeta once found her identity in sports. For years, Ben wasn't interested in his Catholic faith. Sal felt a boost in his spiritual life after coming to Seek last year. But they've all heard what they call lies, reinforced in the culture about what will bring fulfillment.
And the enemy will do whatever they can to get into our heads and make us believe that these worldly things, partying, drugs, sports, whatever it may be, a lifestyle that you're living is what's going to bring you ultimate fulfillment. And it's just not true. Jesus is going to bring you ultimate fulfillment.
At this conference, over the course of 5 days, students have the chance to pray, learn, and grow together.
Some people might think, I have a relationship with Christ. It's an individual relationship. I don't need community.
I thought that way probably about 2 years ago. You need people beside you. Jesus didn't do it on his own. Like, he had 12 other people. So it's like even Jesus Christ needed a group of men.
The apostles. Yeah.
For Ben, this is all pretty new. This time last year, he had more of a partying lifestyle. He never really practiced his Catholic faith until a few months ago, after he felt his life was headed in the wrong direction.
Going down a bad route. And not only was I going down a bad route, but I was one of those people leading others down a bad way too. And I said that prayer. I was like, God, please give me a community of people around me that'll help me build and do good things.
Ben's prayer was answered, and he started getting involved with the Catholic student community at the University of Cincinnati. The group is called Catholic Bearcat, and it took 3 busloads of students to seek this year. Zeta found authentic support and friendship in the same group. She entered the Catholic Church less than a year ago.
Brand new Catholic.
Yes, baby Catholic.
And you seem to be doing pretty well.
I am probably the best. Actually, not probably. I am the best that I've ever felt in my entire life.
Really?
At Seek, some students have powerful experiences encountering Christ. Long lines form as they desire his ever-available forgiveness and healing in the sacrament of confession.
God's mercy is always there, and there's literally nothing you can do to be too far away from God.
And thousands pack the convention hall to worship Christ in adoration, then receive him in the Eucharist and deepen their relationship at Mass.
What have you found in the Catholic Church that has been so good for you?
I mean, I think it's the simple fact of seeing Jesus Christ in person. I mean,
the Eucharist?
In the Eucharist. I mean, I walk into adoration here, I walk into adoration when I'm at home, and I can stare at Christ in the face, and I know that he's looking right back at me.
This is just one stop along the way. But after a few days at Seek, before hopping back on the bus home, we found Ben, Sal, and Zeta empowered to continue their faith journeys. For Ben, it was a powerful realization of Christ's love during prayer and adoration.
It's really difficult to put it into words. The love that he has for me is greater than anything humans can even comprehend.
Sal found inspiration in this diverse Catholic crowd, those seeking and praising.
Just seeing all these people and just the different ways they worship our Lord, it was incredible.
And Zeta encourages others to take that first step.
Find your community, find your people, join a Bible study, go back to confession, just all of those little first steps that are going to get you growing closer to the Lord. It doesn't have to be this huge thing. Come to Mass once.
Mark Irons, EWTN News In Depth.
So inspiring. And with that, we close this edition of EWTN News In Depth. I'm Catherine Hadro. We hope to see you again same time next week for more news and reports important to your Catholic life. Until then, God bless.